Welcome to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. Gated opportunities are often pathways to success. In part 2 of Accessing Gated Opportunities, Pat and James ask, if the front door is frequently closed to creatives like us, how do we find a side door? Or how do we build our own door? I also feel like, and I can't think of the sociological or psychological term for it, but when people from a certain status read or see things from people who are outside of that status, if you're in group, you can sort of almost unconsciously pick up that somebody's out group, right? And so if you're, like you said, Yada wants, the people are going to win the big awards, then, and they've got a selection committee who are obviously all in group, right? Then whether they mean to or not, this sort of instinctual personal bias towards fellow in group things that resonate with, and so that's like, with the Chris Offuts and the Harry Crews of the world. Is it Harry Crews?
Yeah, is he like a gritty kind of,
Yeah, gritty
yeah,
writer.
yeah, like a Charles
So,
Bukowski type? Are you familiar
yeah,
with
yeah,
his name? Yeah.
oh, yeah. So when that voice comes in,
Yeah.
or that, a piece of art with that kind of voice, or dance, or what have you, comes
Mhm.
in, are they gonna just identify this as this is out group, not in group, which means they're not going to get the Pulitzer, they're not going to get the MacArthur funding, those kinds of things.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think that's an interesting question.
I think
you
it's a
know
great question. So, it always surprises me um, when I hear you talk about stuff like this because you're American, and that is, um, that's sort of the romantic myth of America is that everybody can compete for everything. The American dream is to make it regardless of where you came from. But you seem more aware of the sort of hierarchy in the artistic American landscape than I am of a hierarchy in Canada, maybe because our population is smaller. I don't know. There's more government funding, or maybe just because we don't have similar focus on merit as part of how you get, how you get to the top of your field. It's more like we don't have that myth of the lone cowboy who does everything on their own and pulls himself up by their bootstraps. Um, so I wonder if it's a cultural thing. I wonder if we looked at European opportunities, do they require, references? And if so, what are they looking for? Do they want the massive prize winners to come out of their programs, or are they actually a little more about the quality of the work? I also don't know how anybody can gauge what's in and what's out. So we were talking about Jenny Z, and no shade to her book. It was a debut novel called Holding Pattern about a professional hugger.
yeah, and no shade to her, like I would not include her in our stencher
No,
list.
no, no, none of that. But there's
She's using her tools.
exactly. But the thing I notice about Holding Pattern is it's okay. It's not a great novel. So if that's what she was using in her application materials, um, then I don't think you need to have great stuff. And was it insider in some way that I'm not aware of? Like it kind of must have been, I'm feeling, because if it's really just about the quality of the work, there's some absolutely riveting material coming out of, people without MFAs, without access to, sort of the workshopped model of writing, like that I've seen just from clients sending me their stuff. I've done sample edits and I've worked with people whose some of their stuff is absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
Doesn't happen a lot, but it happens enough that I know that there's people out there and that would never occur to them to apply to Yaddo because they're just trying to make a living and they're
yeah.
just trying to get their book seen by agents. So there's this whole aspect of sort of the creative, world that they don't have on their radar because, it just doesn't fit with their life. They can't take off for 4 weeks to go to Yaddo because, they have to work. They don't have that much holiday time.
Yeah, life is a very different thing.
Mhm.
And I'd say for you and I, life is a very different thing than this author who has all the yada da 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 da
Yeah.
stuff. And, again, no shade to her, but
Oh,
obviously when you have a situation where the quality of your work gets above the threshold, right?
yeah,
You've gotten past all the beginner stuff and even the early intermediate kind of stuff. You've
yeah,
actually got, what helps you stand out, and obviously being able to say, well, these committees at Yaddo, McDowell, et cetera, found value in my work.
yeah,
They chose me.
yeah,
If you choose me, then probably the next group of people who are, if you're an agent, you're thinking publishers. If you're a publisher, you're thinking big awards.
yeah,
If she can win with those groups, she can win with the award selection committees too.
yeah. Very
So,
interesting. Okay, and that brings me to the idea of, professional creatives. There's many, many writers who also teach.
mhm,
And, so their way of, increasing their credibility and sort of their marketability as teachers is also to get into these places. So it's a career move in the way that a terrific writer who manages a factory, it's not a career move for them because they're still making all their money managing the factory. They're not up for teaching jobs. They don't have a secondary degree, stuff like that. So there's kind of a built-in, um, n- noticeability factor with professional creatives who also teach in their field, that
mhm.
they are more aware of these opportunities as being important to further the teaching side of their career, because as we know from the Authors Guild, um, the median income for full-time writers is only $10,000 a year. So you have to do other stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and I would think too. The same as for probably all artists.
Yeah.
So you can find artists right now who are making gobs of money on each painting, but I live in Exeter, New Hampshire. We have a lot of very, very, very talented artists,
Mhm.
and they're doing really exceptional work. And maybe, the New York galleries aren't going to say they're breaking the new ground that, makes them the next Monet or what have you. But they're doing really beautiful work has that is completely within their voice. Like nobody else can do what they're doing.
Mm.
They're selling paintings, probably about 750 per painting.
Mhm.
But how long does it take to create that painting? How long does it take to sell that painting? How many can you do in a year? How many can you sell in a year?
Yeah.
And the way that you up your ability to make money in that world is more galleries start carrying your work
Yeah.
and more prestigious galleries. And so they're facing that same conundrum that you
Mhm.
just described. It's like,
Yeah.
how do you get there?
How do you go from selling, paintings are often actually priced by size. So let's say you've got a 2 by 3 foot painting for 750 bucks. How do you charge 7,500 for that?
Right, right.
And that
Well,
you do. Mm?
right. Well, I think you need a gallery,
You need a
and
gallery. Yeah, I would say so. I don't know enough about the art, the visual arts world to say, but I've the people I know who are artists, you're not gonna sell a painting for 7,500 bucks at a weekend art fair.
right. And so then you're at like, so then I would think, how do you get access to a gallery?
Yeah.
And if you have an MFA in, visual arts, then your professor is probably part of what markets that program
Mhm.
is their ability to connect you with the gallerists and the galleries that have the kind of weight and credibility to be able to for you to be able to approach them and
Mhm.
even consider,
Yeah.
and then to be able to get in and be able to access that in group as opposed to remaining in that out group.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about teachers, I think for writing, there's probably a similar thing that, can these professors get their students access, not just to like agents and acquisition editors, but um, steer them and help them navigate towards the residencies that are going to build their profile
Mhm.
and all those kinds of things that now feel like the ladder to success.
Mhm.
Uh, if you define it by bestsellerdom and winning the big prestigious awards,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's complicated, isn't it?
Yeah. And I wanted to you said the billboard test, and that feels like a really awesome, I've never heard of it. And so, but it feels like a really awesome concrete thing that we can say to, our fellow gifted underachievers.
Yeah.
Uh what is that? How does that work?
Tell you more about the billboard test?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me tell you where I heard that because I didn't make that up. I was so there's this online writing group called London Writers Salon, and they 5 time zones around the world. They have an 8 a.m. writing hour. Well, you can join it from wherever. So I joined the Pacific one. It's Monday. I do it Monday to Friday. I don't know if they do it on weekends. Anyway, after one of their writing hours, they had a presenter come on and talk about grants fellowships, how to see these opportunities, where are they? And she came from, I think, sort of a marketing PR background, and she talked about the billboard test, saying if you were to see yourself on a billboard, your book or your name or whatever it is that represents you, and then the organization that's sponsoring this grant next to you on the billboard, does it fit? So it's a deeper thing than will your one-time application, meet the basic requirements that they're asking for in the application form. It's how do you show that you are a really good fit for that organization? And one way to kind of conceptualize it is to just imagine the billboard and go, what would need to show on that billboard for me to fit with that organization? If your stuff doesn't Forget I think she used the word jive. If your stuff doesn't jive with, their kind of their presentation, how they promote themselves, their brand, then don't apply because 'cause you're not gonna get the award.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I like that. That's really, really interesting. And so for our, delusional ambitions uh piece, so all of these places are going to require some sort of artist statement or writer
Yeah,
statement saying, what is your purpose?
yeah,
And so I think some concrete advice using the billboard test is really, really look at that program and think about, how do they measure their worth, their value, their success? Where do they get their ego from?
hey,
Uh, what juices them for them to be able to turn around and say, look at what our people are doing,
yeah,
and put that into your artist statement, reflect that in your artist statement that
yeah,
say, so if I'm Pat Doby sending in a piece of work to get into bread loaf,
mhm,
I fully, my goal is to win the Booker Prize. That has been my goal for 30 years. And
my
I see
delusional ambition.
coming to Breadloaf as a key step in
Yeah,
that ladder
yeah,
to get
yeah,
um and then they feel like, oh well, we're the doorway to the Booker.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I wanna give a shout out, to the person who was who was presenting. Her name is Danielle Desir Corbett, so we'll put it in the show notes,
Great.
whatever. And she has got a Substack, uh, grants for creatives or grants for creators, and that's all she does is find opportunities. Some of them are institutional, like Yaddo, McDowell, that kind of thing, and it's a lot of them are actually privately funded. like
Mhm.
Famous Amos cookies, they have grants. Uh, so that's the ones where you can do the billboard test because they are, the privately funded ones, you have a really good chance of getting them, and they have them. Her Substack sorts them by like grants for BIPOC writers, grants for writers over 50, or not just writers, for all kinds of creatives. So I just think that's something I'm going to investigate. There's a paywall for her newsletter because it's very time consuming, what she does, but I'm going to subscribe because I just think it's one of those things I've been wondering about. And I think it would be a great experiment to just really investigate how grants as an income stream can actually potentially move you up the ladder because they involve all this ancillary stuff like meeting the basic threshold for artistic, quality, and then also who do they expose you to in the world of grant recipients that can then help you, or you can help each other, whatever. So I think I'm going to do it as a controlled experiment for the next year.
Oh, cool. Cool. Yeah, good. No, I think that's great. And I've been learning that you've got to do this stuff because, I mean, it sounds simple and kind of plain, but having a really sharp bio
Yeah,
that you can, you have your boilerplate bio that you can
yeah,
then adapt, use this billboard test to adapt it to whatever it is that you're trying to apply to or pitch for and
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And it's not a bio that you would read anywhere else, right?
yeah,
It's bio that really goes beyond just who am I and what do I do.
yeah,
Um, that has, subtle, maybe not so subtle pitch to it that hits the right notes at the right time.
yeah.
And that's something I've been learning as I've been going through this process of trying to grow my profile as a ghostwriter
Hmm.
is um if I don't have a recent bestseller, that's the criteria, and I'm competing against those people. Well, what do I have that maybe counterweights?
Hmm. Hmm.
How do I present it in a bio or a pitch letter or a query letter in a way that resonates so that the gatekeeper says, oh, there's something here. There's
Yeah,
something worth that maybe I want to pass this along to the potential client.
yeah,
So,
yeah. That makes total sense. And I think also, if now that we're looking at this as an actual process, versus, oh, it's luck, or, oh, it's,
mhm,
just what happened 20 years ago in my education is affecting what I qualify for now. Um, then it also requires a certain amount of organization, being treated like a project. So you need a giant document with all the variations on your bio and which ones worked and which ones didn't work, where you've applied, how much you spent. Because a lot of, these applications aren't free.
right.
Some of them. So it's a very interesting, kind of a sideline, but it could be a huge time consuming project, but it doesn't have to be. I think it could be, if you organize it properly, it can be quite creative in itself.
Yeah. Well,
Weirdly.
the interesting thing is that, again, the people with resources,
Yeah.
various forms of privilege,
Yeah.
there's services out there that do that for you.
Are there?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Huh.
And they will create all that stuff for you and targeted toward, whatever it is that you want to do.
Wow.
So I think we need to acknowledge, yes, of course, there's the stench of privilege in a lot of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
uh, and unfairness and that kind of thing, but I think too, as you know sort of another takeaway is apply. Don't give
Absolutely.
don't give in to learned helplessness. um you know Really, if they're saying you don't need a reference, that's one less thing that you do have to come up with, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there is some way that they're still pulling the ladder up, but my other stance after suspicion was a little bit more hope,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
maybe maybe I could send something off and uh, you know if not get in, have a better chance, or at least maybe get a actual note as
oh, that's a It's
Like,
adorable.
thank you for applying to the blah, 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 blah.
I don't know. Call me cynical, like I can't believe suspicion was my first response because it seems
Oh,
so
it was mine.
weird. Yeah, yeah, and I think anybody who's been around the field of writing long enough is kind of just like, yeah, if there's an opportunity that seems more even, the road's a little evener in terms of
Uh,
who can walk that road, I don't trust it. There's gonna be big ditches on either side. People are gonna get, like, the big hook coming out, pulling them down into the ditch.
yeah.
But I'm hoping, and remember, hope is that dead bird, right? The one with the crushed skull. I'm really hoping that it's not true, that, the suspicion is unfounded, and that this whole world of the ways that you can get help as a creative, by organizations that are actually founded to help creatives, that those are more open to all kinds of creatives, working creatives, whether you have connections or you don't have connections, whether you have money or you don't have money. So that would be great. Yeah, I'm with you on the hope.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's hope that
Let's
it's
hope, and we're also going to test it because I'm serious.
less it's more whoever the big aspirational person would be, and a lot less Edward Gorey. Thanks for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. We'd love to hear how we're doing, so please leave a comment, join our chat page, or send us an email at giftedunderachievers@substack.com. Have an awesome day.